U.S. Olympic gold medalist Nathan Chen is facing backlash on Chinese social media, and it may have something to do with his comments about China. The 22-year-old took home gold on Thursday in the men's figure skating event, but his victory didn't sit well with Chinese netizens. On Chinese social media site Weibo, the consensus was that his performance was rather mediocre. Many voiced anger about his win, while some accused him of insulting China. Despite the comments, speculation is rising that the pushback isn't really about Chen's performance. In an interview last week, Chen said he agrees that China's human rights record is abysmal and noted that change at a remarkable scale is needed for improvement inside the country. Some accused him of, quote, insulting China with the comments. Other online criticism stems from Chen's choice of background music. In a 2018 Olympic performance, he used a song from the movie Mao's Last Dancer. The film is set during former Communist Party leader Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution. It tells the story of a Chinese dancer's escape from Communist China and journey to the U.S. Nathan Chen was born in the U.S. to Chinese immigrant parents. As the U.S. celebrates its gold medal in figure skating, human rights abuses may be happening just up the street. A Chinese detention center is just a short drive away from where U.S. figure skater Nathan Chen won gold.
The Falun Dafa Information Center recently released a map showing locations of Beijing's detention centers.
We went through the whole Beijing area. We mapped out the main Olympic venues. We mapped out the prison and detention centers so that people could see with their own eyes just how close these two things were in modern China.
One of those facilities in Beijing is the Chaoyang Detention Center. It's around a 10-minute drive from the figure skating venue, Capital Indoor Stadium. Horrific means of torture have happened inside the center. That's according to first-hand statements given to U.S.-based Falun Gong information website Minhui.org. Falun Gong practitioner Ms. Xiao Fengwen was previously detained there. When she went on a hunger strike, police would force-feed her, not to rescue her, but as a torture method. Police would force her mouth open using pliers. Her teeth became loose afterward. On one occasion, police inserted a tube through her nose and into her stomach to force-feed her. She says they pulled the tube back and forth to cause more pain. Another practitioner told Minhui.org about her experience. She recounted, "They started to force-feed me with the highly concentrated salt water. The tube was not removed after the force feeding was over, so I felt the extreme pain every time I breathed, and my eyes were full of tears. The suffering was beyond description." Other accounts of torture describe police pouring cold water onto detainees in freezing temperatures. They would then let the water slowly turn into ice on their bodies.
This regime is doing horrific things to prisoners of conscience right in the middle of one of their main cities, right in the middle of the Olympics. And
during the Olympics, Beijing heightens security around the venues and brings in more security personnel. Brody says Beijing has been simultaneously leveraging that extra security to crack down on dissidents. He adds that this has been the case since the 2008 Games. That's how popular Chinese singer and Falun Gong practitioner Yu Zhou and his wife Xuna were arrested during that year's Summer Olympics.
They were at a Olympic-related security checkpoint, and the police officer simply found a Falun Gong book in their bag. That was it, and that was enough to take them both into custody. 11 days later,
Xuna's husband died days later in prison. She was released 3 years later. But leading up to this year's Winter Olympics, a Beijing court sentenced Xu another 8 years in prison.
The CCP is so brazen and so audacious with suppressing, putting prisoners of conscience into prison. They'll do it wide open. They'll do it leading up to the Olympics, knowing it's going to get the full attention, almost as if they're sort of displaying that this is how they're going to treat Falun Gong and no one can do anything about it.
So then why do we hear little mention of Falun Gong from politicians and the media? Brody says a conflict of interest may be at play.
The CCP exerts a tremendous amount of political and economic pressure. And I think there are those who just feel that it's too much of a sacrifice of their own position, their own economic welfare, or the welfare of their area.
Brody says that the few who are not influenced by the CCP have been clear about this clampdown for years, that what's happening to Falun Gong in China is genocide.
Xu Na was far from the only one arrested leading up to the Olympics. In January 2022, at least 132 Falun Gong practitioners have been convicted by the regime due to their beliefs. This is according to statistics from Falun Gong information website minghui.org. Close to 24 of those convicted are 60 to 90 years old. Most were given 3 to 4 year sentences. Inside China's closed Olympic loop, its propaganda arm seems to be in full swing at the 22 Beijing Media Center. An Asia correspondent for Swiss radio and television shared an image on Twitter, capturing the center's information desk. It shows a book by Communist leader Xi Jinping on full display, available in various languages. The book is titled Xi Jinping, The Governance of China. It's a collection of Xi's words and writings, mostly about his political philosophy as the current leader of the Chinese Communist Party. Nearly 2,000 journalists from nearly 500 different media outlets visit the center where Xi's book is displayed. The center provides services for them while they're in Beijing covering the games. The center's political display seems to be at odds with Beijing's official rhetoric against what it calls the politicization of the Olympics. That's after a series of international diplomatic boycotts against the Beijing Games due to China's human rights record. As for what's in Xi Jinping's book, it's a 3-volume collection. In it, the CCP leader emphasizes the concept of socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. The term socialism with Chinese characteristics has become a guiding principle for the Communist Party since the 1980s. But Xi added the words new era. Experts say it means Xi will turn away from China's traditional low-profile foreign policy and move towards a more assertive approach toward international society, especially when it comes to the US, Australia, and Europe, plus its neighbors like Taiwan, India, and countries surrounding the South China Sea. China rolled out its central bank digital currency for visitors and athletes to use at the Winter Olympics. It's a chance for Beijing to display the digital yuan to the world. But how much traction will it get? We talked to a business and economics expert to learn more. NTD's Don Ma has the story.
China's central bank digital currency is also known as digital yuan or renminbi. It's basically cash, but in a digital format. It's issued by China's central bank, and the bank can monitor every transaction made with it.
This could become a better way, extremely good way for Chinese government to control people's personal finance.
At the Olympics, how exactly does Beijing plan to promote it? Athletes could be given a gift card containing the digital currency, and they will be free to spend it as they wish. But those athletes may run into a problem.
Where can they spend money? I think that's the weirdest thing, you can see. They're given some little, you can say it's a play money, but they don't even have a place to play and use that money.
There's few places to spend the money because Chinese authorities have confined all athletes within a closed-loop system, or bubble. This is where the games will take place. It's not too different from a quarantine facility. Athletes aren't allowed to leave the area, and people outside aren't allowed to enter.
They'll find out this is probably most restricted, even more restricted than Hitler's Olympic game, the most restricted Olympic game in Olympic history.
This means that athletes aren't able to roam around Beijing to shop with the digital yuan. Professor Xie says it's possible China's merely using the Olympics as a publicity stunt. But he says promotion of the digital renminbi to other countries would be in vain.
Renminbi is not freely exchangeable. It's not freely convertible to other currencies. The digital Chinese currency is useless outside of China. So there's really no need for internationalization of Chinese digital currency. It's just a pointless promotion here.
One of the biggest topics of discussion surrounding China's digital yuan is whether it can eventually replace the US dollar to become the global reserve currency. But Professor Xie says he doesn't see that happening in the foreseeable future.
Amid the erosion of freedoms in Hong Kong, a backbench debate this afternoon focused on the UK's friendship with Taiwan. MPs voiced concerns over the threats Taiwan faces from the Chinese Communist Party and also brought up Taiwan's exclusion from the WHO, saying the world could have learned sooner from Taiwan's pandemic response if it was a member. NTD's Jane Werrell brings us this report.
The relationship between the UK and Taiwan was in the spotlight earlier in a debate put forward by MPs Bob Stewart and Alicia Kearns.
So when people ask why we should care about an island on the other side of the globe, I say the answer is simple. Taiwan represents the best of democracy, and the United Kingdom must always take the side of democracy and our friends trying to uphold its values.
Within the debate, concerns also voiced over the impact of Chinese Communist Party infiltration on British academia through Confucius Institutes.
And indeed, members may not know, but the country with the highest number of Confucius Institutes to head population is indeed Scotland. This should give us grave concern. But does he think perhaps, given that the Taiwanese people speak Mandarin and indeed write a higher level of more ancient Chinese, that perhaps we could be looking to them to perhaps provide education in Mandarin more within this country? And on one other quick point of when we draw comparisons, does he find it interesting that the Chinese government has felt the need to sanction both Taiwanese and British parliamentarians, and how shameful that is that they continue to attack our democracies?
My very good friend, the answer to both your questions is yes and yes. I totally agree. I note, by the way, that the President Ing Wen has committed Taiwan to have a dual Mandarin-English as official languages of the country. I think that's tremendous, actually. That's tremendous, within 8 years.
Some MPs practiced their language skills.
And to the people of Taiwan, I would simply say, Yong Yun de Pan Yo.
Oh, well done.
Yes. Catherine West.
Yeah. Well, 谢谢我们都是朋友. So, lovely finish to this SNP spokesman's speech, and I'm sure we could all practice our Mandarin here. And a big thank you also, a big 谢谢 to the member for Rutland and Melton for once again bringing an excellent Thursday debate.
And there were strong words on the exclusion of Taiwan from the WHO.
The absence of Taiwan's voice on the World Health Organization is a worse performance against COVID, against the Wuhan virus that emerged under Chinese tutelage. And would she not agree with me that what we are actually seeing is a damaged response and a worse ability for the British people to protect themselves because China has decided, for its own selfish reasons, to bully and silence Taiwan?
The minister saying the UK will continue to work to advocate for Taiwan in international organisations and to work with international partners to ensure peace and stability on the Taiwan Strait.
A Chinese businessman's appeal has been denied. That's after he received a 7-year prison sentence. His crime? Selling Christian books. Chen Yu owns the wheat bookstore in China's southern Zhejiang province. He was sentenced in 2020 after being charged with what was labeled an illegal business operation. He was also slapped with an over $30,000 fine for the same reason. Chen appealed the decision, but Zhejiang's provincial court upheld the verdict on Thursday. Chen's bookstore was a popular source of books for Christians in China. His shop attracted clients not only from his province, but also from those in North and Central China. When he was arrested in 2019, the authorities accused him of having sold over 20,000 Bibles and other Christian books. Over 10,000 more found on the premises were destroyed by local authorities. The Chinese Communist regime classified Chen's book selling as anti-China. That's because some of the Christian books he sold were printed in Taiwan and the U.S., meaning those versions weren't scrutinized by Chinese authorities, unlike virtually all other religious books available in the country. As Chen's appeal was denied, he now remains in detention in Zhejiang province. A recent document is laying out rules for education in China. One of them states the Chinese Communist Party should make all important decisions in schools, and students should be educated for the party. Beijing's Central Committee released the document late last month. It orders officials to build a principal responsibility system under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. That directive applies to all student grade levels from primary to high school. The document stresses that the CCP's control should be strengthened, describing that goal as a fundamental need for a smooth-running education system. The document also gives instructions for strengthening the CCP's leadership. It urges all primary and secondary schools in China to have CCP cells on campus, meaning offices directly linked to the Communist Party. It also states teachers should understand that these party cells actually run each school. That means these offices would make all important decisions for their schools, including hiring and leading educators. That's to ensure Communist Party directives are carried out. On top of that, the document also asks CCP cells from each school to report to their superiors and the party periodically and describe in detail what's been done to implement those directives.